The Diaries is brought to you by that friend who always says, hell yeah! Want to climb El Cap? How about a river trip in June? Running on a random January Wednesday in the pouring rain? I'm there. We need friends like that. And here at the Diaries, we've got them. They're called Diaries Plus members. 2 years ago, we didn't know if we'd make it. We weren't going to run ads for online gambling because you know what? That's stupid. We came here to you to ask for your help. And some of you did. And it's meant that 2 years later, we're here making it work. But we have a vision where we thrive, not just survive, where we continue to be ambitious and bring our message of outdoor connection and friendship and community to the next generation. So if you believe in that, if you are someone who can say, hell yeah, please consider becoming a member of the Diaries Plus. Link is in the show notes and on our website. Okay, Lauren, good morning. I'm curious. What is the smallest you've ever felt? Like that feeling of being so far away from regular life, so remote that you understand how big the world is and how small you are in relation to it.
God, that's such a good question. I feel like there's a couple different ways you can think of remoteness. Like the first place that comes to mind for me is like the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Like you feel so in nature there, but also weirdly not remote because there's like tons of people. You can buy a lemonade.
And a helicopter flying over. Yeah.
Yeah, and like mule teams. But it's like a place that you feel small, right? And then I think about like a climbing trip my husband and I did to Morocco a few years ago. But it's the same thing. Like it's the furthest that I feel like I've ever been from home. But we're still just staying in someone else's home. It's not like there's nobody out there. So I don't know. Maybe like the deserts of Utah, you know, San Rafael Swell or something like that. I feel like that might be one of the most remote places in terms of distance from where other people live, you know, that I've ever been. What about you?
You know, I think for me, it would probably have to be the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. I don't know, probably 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I did a trip into the refuge. We like got dropped off on a gravel bar, like way up in the Brooks Range and floated the Congaccut River down to the ocean. Probably over like, I can't even remember, like 7-8 days. It was a while. Like I definitely,
So cool.
It was like a crazy experience. And, you know, up in the mountains, it kind of was like, oh, we're just in the mountain. You know, it was like, it felt like very, very rugged, very remote. But there was something about coming to the Arctic Ocean. You know, the North Slope gets super flat, so you're out in these like this incredible tundra, and you're just going towards the ocean, and then you just show up. And I remember there was just, you know, there were still icebergs, but most of the ice had melted out. But there was just this like feeling of being like, well, that's it. We've come to the end of the earth. Like that's how it totally felt.
Totally. Yeah. Like how far, when you're thinking of that remoteness, like how far do you think you were from, you know, communities where people actually live, or to a hospital, or, you know, to some sort of thing that we would consider like civilization, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I gotta say is like people have lived in the North Slope of Alaska for eons, right? Or since time immemorial. There are a few tiny villages up there. And I think realistically, we were pretty out there. Certainly you wouldn't want to get hurt, right? But even then, I think just with the infrastructure of Alaska and the bush plains, it's like, I think that, you know, as long as you weren't in too bad of a place when it happened, I think, you know, with like a spot transceiver and all this stuff, like a satellite phone, I think you probably are only 24 hours away from a hospital, like realistically, which when you think about it, isn't that crazy? I guess.
I mean, I think, right, you're bringing up this point where when we think about remoteness, we're thinking typically about mountain ranges, land masses, you know, that stretch to the poles, the deserts of Africa. I think of like Mongolia, right? Or some like huge expanse of land with like no grocery stores, no hospitals, things like that. But, you know, even though we're thinking of those as like the most remote places on the planet, it's almost hard to remember that like 71% of the planet is ocean, right? And this is not permanently habitable space. You know, might think of like islands as really remote, but some stretches of ocean are probably actually the most remote places on the planet. You know, the farthest from help, the most demanding places when it comes to true self-reliance.
Today we bring you a story of friendship forged in the pain and exertion of Division I sports, and then applied to one of the world's most difficult endurance feats, a human-powered crossing of the Pacific.
Yeah, for Libby Costello and Sophia Walters, the call of adventure, it came to them in the form of a 28-foot rowboat and the open ocean. And honestly, I still can't really wrap my head around this story.
I'm Fitz Cahall.
I'm Lauren Delaney Miller.
You're listening to the Dirtbag Diaries.
We woke up and it was just like this knowing was in the air. Like we had our last breakfast. We like had gotten it ready. We put all our bags in the car and we just walked down the dock the same way we had, been walking down in our practice rows. And it was so exciting to like shove off the dock and be like, we're about to do the thing that we've been thinking about for over a year, that we've been preparing for. And also, nobody can tell us how to do it now. I think there was this like feeling of freedom because we get to really do the thing that we know in our bones we're like capable of doing. And there was something like really surreal about it. It just felt right. And it felt like it was the time to go, and it felt like we were ready to go.
Picture this: 4 women in a small boat. Not a sailboat, not a yacht, a rowboat, a tiny white speck in the water as they paddle under San Francisco's iconic Golden Gate Bridge. There are a lot of people in the water around them. Kayakers, paddleboarders, sailors. Some are fishing, some are just out enjoying the sunshine and the cool breeze coming off the Pacific into the San Francisco Bay. At first glance, the women in their rowboat don't really stand out. Sure, the boat is a little funny looking, but it's San Francisco. People are used to weird things. There are a lot of unknowns up ahead, but as the women rowed together, one thing is for certain. They're the only ones out there who are going where they're going.
Someone came by us in like a kayak and was like, oh, like, where are you guys going? And we were like, Hawaii. And they were like, what? We're like, we gotta go.
That's right, Hawaii. This is day 1 of Libby Costello and Sophia Walters' crossing of the Pacific Ocean, and they won't stop until they get to Hawaii. How long it takes will depend on wind, navigation, and tenacity. But if they make it there in under 35 days, 14 hours, and 23 minutes, they and their 2 other teammates, Adrian Smith and Brooke Downs, will set the women's world record. The clock officially starts when their boat crosses under the Golden Gate Bridge. But like many good adventure stories, this one started long ago.
We met on the UCLA women's rowing team.
This is Libby.
I was a freshman and Sophie was a sophomore. She's a year older than I am, but she's a really magnetic person, and it was just sort of over that time that we formed a friendship.
My first memory of you is we were on like this bus.
This is Sophia. I'll try to help you keep their voices straight throughout the episode.
I just like remember hearing Libby's voice. It's like got this, especially when Libby gets excitable, it becomes like higher and higher pitched, and it carries like sound more than everyone else's voice. And I just like remember hearing you like on that bus, on the bus on the way to practice, and just being like, wow, like this girl is different. And Libby's like enthusiasm was just like off the charts, like no matter what anyone was talking about. But I also remember that, when a teammate of ours got sick and had to be in the hospital a couple of days, Libby was the one who brought a get well card. And even as a freshman, like I remember thinking like, wow, that's such like a thing that a leader would do. Libby couldn't be inauthentic if she tried her darndest.
Libby and Sophia both started rowing in high school as part of a winding pursuit to find a sport they really connected with. Rowing, they explained to me, is what you might call a grunty sport. The harder you row, the faster you go. And that, to each of them, was an irresistible challenge.
I went to Berkeley High School, which had, at least at the time, I don't know if it's still true, the only public high school with a rowing team west of the Mississippi.
Sophia's school hosted an open Learn to Row Day for students to check out this new sport. They put them through a test on the rowing machine, which rowers call the ergometer, erg for short.
And I remember there was a boy that I knew from school who was also at the Learn to Row Day. And he said some silly comment of like, oh, I'm sure I can beat you on this 200 meters because I'm a boy and you're a girl and boys are stronger. Honestly, sounds like a movie, like a made up story. But yeah, I took the challenge. I was like, no way, Jose. And I beat him. And I was like, this is my thing. Like, I'm a rower now. Like, and I was obsessed. The coaches like could tell I was obsessed. And they were like, you can come to the varsity camp if you want. And I remember my first day after a varsity camp, I like couldn't even go to the toilet because I was so sore because I was like just way in over my head. And I was just like obsessed from that moment on.
Sophia wanted to keep rowing in college, but she wasn't being recruited. Both Livy and Sophia are less than 5.5 feet tall. And in a sport based on leverage, height makes a big difference. But despite not having the stereotypical rower's body, Sophia wasn't ready to throw in the towel after high school.
I'll go and talk to college coaches and they would be like, I mean, you can try, like usually someone of your size, like maybe we'll have one person on the team who like does okay. But like, I don't know if this is your place. But the coach at UCLA was one of the only coaches at a Division I school who was like, the sport like rewards work. And if you're someone who works, then you can do anything. She's like, it'll be hard, but like if you're a hard worker, like I don't know you, maybe that's fine. I was like, yeah, that's right. I am a hard worker. Perfect. I'm going here.
Meanwhile, Libby was on the East Coast, and when her best friend suggested they try rowing as a fall sport to fill in the calendar until track season started in the spring, she figured, why not?
It was pretty nonchalant to start, but it pretty quickly turned into more of like a lifeline for me. And I ended up moving states after freshman year of high school. And so it really became like the way that I found myself and could express myself and relate to other people. And one of my requests of my parents when we were moving was that we move to a town that had a rowing club nearby so that I could keep doing it because I was not good at all, but I knew that I wanted to get better. Like one of the really common tests is a 5K test, which takes anywhere between like 18 and 25 minutes. But I remember like my first 5K test, I was so tired halfway through that I stopped for like 3 strokes to take a sip of water, which you never ever do.
It's like illegal, straight to jail.
Absolutely illegal. And then I kept going, but I was just like, this thing is so hard and I don't know how to get better at it. I'm just like gonna throw all the spaghetti at the wall. And I loved it like every day. I would go to the boathouse early because I just wanted to like be at the boathouse around the boats and like around the ergs and stuff. But I resolved pretty quickly that I wanted to like row as long as feasibly possible. And this took me through high school and college. And I ended up at UCLA, which was amazing.
Sophia was able to walk on to the team at UCLA with the support of an encouraging coach. And the next year, Libby joined as a new recruit from the East Coast. They were surrounded by athletic excellence, and UCLA was a place where they felt like they could tap into their intrinsic motivations to see how far they could push themselves.
We'd have usually 2 practices a day, 5 days a week, and then we'd have like a double session on Saturday. And so it was just like every day you're waking up like quite early to go rowing, and then you come back and you like run with your backpack to like go get breakfast, go to classes, and then we'd have an afternoon practice. So I think as much as it did like require you to be really on top of your organization and your time management, there was also a lot of community around that because like we had a locker room in a building where all the other sports also had locker rooms. And so like you make friends that are on other teams, and it just reminded you how much excellence you're around and also how much excellence you're a part of.
Rowing is a sport where you don't compete that often. It's like your training season is like spring through or fall through spring. Like you have no off season while you're in school. And then you only race like somewhere between 7 and 11 times total. So I feel like for me, like my big thing about college rowing was like more of like my personal development as an athlete, maybe more so than any one race. I went in as like knowing that I was going to be a small fish in a big pond and not knowing if I could hang on and like keep up. And I think that I just like my fitness and my ability grew far beyond what I had imagined because of being in an environment where like I was just reaching to be at the level of everyone around me.
We had a teammate at some point who was talking about getting faster, and basically when you look at your ergometer screen, it tells you like a certain speed, like how fast you would be doing like 500 meters or something. And she was like, if you want to go faster, you just like lower the split. Like you just hold it until you can't hold it anymore. And just the idea of trying until, you know, you hit your edge and then like showing up the next day and like doing the same thing and doing the same thing. It was just something that made a lot of sense in my brain.
But I think that that's probably where a lot of like the identity and the pride in being a workhorse comes from, is being like, yeah, it's uncomfortable, but I'm choosing the discomfort and I'm choosing to be here and sit here. And I'm actually able to tolerate even more discomfort than these other people. And that's my competitive advantage. And I think a lot of people do like harness that kind of darkness in order to be successful in endurance sports.
For both Libby and Sophia, learning to harness that darkness within was a critical part of their interest in the sport. There was something about being able to put their heads down and try as hard as they could that was uniquely cathartic.
I think that for me, I was taken advantage of at a young age and had a situation where I was just not in control of my body. And I think I had a lot of shame around like not being able to defend myself or be in control. And I think that, you know, a lot of probably people who are into endurance sports and the uphill sports probably have like can relate to this idea that like it feels like the healthiest outlet to exercise control over your body. For me personally, you know, I did need to have an experience where I learned to trust and be proud of my body and what it could do. And so I think that, you know, there's a reason why sports are so helpful for mental health. And I think that for me, what it did was it helped me survive, like the distraction and the obsession helped me survive long enough to get to a place in my life where I was secure in myself and what I was capable of. There's definitely a darkness. Yeah, if you like pain, you should try rowing.
Before they knew it, their time at UCLA was coming to a close. Graduation was looming, first for Sophia and then the next year for Libby. And like many college athletes, they both struggled to know what this sport that had defined years of their lives would mean for them when they left the college arena. Without the structure of being a student athlete, what did they want their relationship to rowing to look like in the next phase of their lives? Here's Libby.
I thought that I would be done rowing. One of the aspects that's difficult about like transitioning out of a D1 training program at all, specifically in rowing, is like you're training for 20 hours a week. And to do that when you're not racing for something very specific, to graduate and to like not have that race on your calendar, like why would I keep training for this? At least for me, I needed to reevaluate, okay, how much training do I want to do? How much training do I need to do?
Libby started to run ultramarathons as sort of a replacement for that need to try really hard, and as an outlet for a grief that was, at times, completely overwhelming.
Right after I finished my first ultra, my mom flew into town and she told me that my best friend had died. The same one who suggested that we try rowing back when we were like 14. And like my whole world collapsed. everything went dark for me. And so any version of the future that I had even thought of after college, like, involved him, and now he was gone.
After graduating, Sophia and Libby would occasionally meet up to trail run, but while Libby had assumed she was done rowing, after a disappointing end to her senior year caused by an injury, Sophia wasn't ready to hang up the oars just yet.
I trained as a lightweight. I raced a couple seasons, and it was really hard to just even to stay engaged with the sport, but have the support totally disappear. But I did feel like I eventually like found my groove and got better and had a performance where I was proud of what I did.
In February of 2021, 3 years after leaving UCLA, Sophia competed in the Olympic trials, placing 4th.
I was like, I worked my butt off to be here. I don't care about the result. I know I'm going to have my best race on the day that it counts. And I did, and I didn't win, but like I felt like a lot of closure. And I also felt proud that I like ended my rowing career on my terms.
She thought, okay, I'm finally at peace with leaving rowing. I can be someone else now.
And like I had some dramatic announcement on social media about how rowing was no longer going to be a part of my life. I was like, I'm so happy. Like, why am I crying all the time? Like, why do I feel like I have no energy? I'm so sad and I can't name it. I don't know where this is coming from. And I feel so unreasonable and like hysterics. And I listened to this podcast about addiction, which is not about exercise addiction at all, just addiction in general as a topic. And I was like, oh my God, like that's literally describing what it feels like I'm going through.
In trying to come out of this post-race pit of despair, Sophia's mind returned to a book that had been collecting dust on her shelf.
A friend had given me this book like years before, and I just like never thought to read it. And it described ocean rowing, and I honestly didn't like it very much. I'm so sorry, Jason. I was like, this sounds horrible. Can't relate to this guy. Like, could not be further like from me as a person. But I found myself talking about ocean rowing like all the time. I'd find ways to bring it up in conversation. And eventually Logan, my now husband, was like, hey, so you keep talking about this thing. Like, when are you going to admit to yourself that you kind of want to do this? And I was like, what are you talking about? It sounds so horrible.
Sophia reached out to the author of the book, Jason Caldwell. Just a few weeks after Olympic trials and the supposed end of her rowing career, he presented her with an idea. Did she want to put together a team of women to row across the Pacific?
When Jason started to talk to Sophie, he started to experience something that everybody experiences when they're around her, which is like a sense of possibility. And at that point, his business had sort of been built on him doing certain adventures every couple of years and then talking about it. But he had reached all of his teams that he'd built had been comprised of men. And in hopes of reaching a new sect of his audience, he had the idea of like building an all women's team that would row across an ocean. And he had the perfect candidate on the other side of the phone with him for the first member of that team, which was Sophie, because anything that you may want to do, if you bring it to her, it feels like more within reach. She's just like this. She's like a doer and she's like a dreamer, and she just is like the most encouraging type of hype person. And so he brought this idea and was like, I'll serve as your mentor. You can use my boat and like we'll pick the ocean and you guys will represent my team.
I showed Libby and she was like, oh, we're doing this. And I was like, yeah, you're right.
I said yes to this ocean row, but I didn't know if I was going to be around by the time we were going to launch, like 15 months later, because I was like so engulfed in grief that I thought I could just perish from sadness like any day. But I loved rowing, at one point, and I trusted Sophie, And I thought, well, maybe if I could care about anything again, it could be this project. It was like in that process of preparation that I started to come back to life.
There is a whole episode to be told about the life of Jason Caldwell, but for this story, what you need to know is that after his own experience rowing across the Atlantic, he started a company that puts together teams to take on big, adventurous challenges. He was also the owner of an organization called the Great Pacific Race, and while the timing wasn't right for the women to do their Pacific row as part of the race, they could use it as their framework. With Jason's help and expertise, the women had just over a year to plan, and there was a lot of planning to be done. Despite their years of flatwater rowing, ocean rowing would be a whole new beast. The first thing they needed to do was put together a crew. But before they could decide who would be on the team, they needed to decide how many people there should be.
People go on many different size teams from 1 to 5 or 6. There's even people who have done like 12, which sounds really gnarly to me. 4 has just felt like the right number to me. Like if it was between 1 and 4, 1, you're not on a team. And that sounds sad. 2, you're on a team, but because you have to trade rowing shifts and sleeping shifts, like you don't really get quality time with the person that you're with. And then the thing with 3 is also the shift patterns can be hard to figure out, like math and time wise. Around like how much rowing versus rest do you get. So on a boat of 3, either you're rowing more than you're resting or someone's rowing by themselves for a lot of the time. And when you're on a boat of 4, it's just always 2. And there's pretty much never a time where you're rowing by yourself. And I think just the team aspect, like Libby and I are both really team players. And I think that being on a team is like a big part of what makes it rewarding and fulfilling. And so in a lot of ways, I think that was just like a given would be like a women's 4.
They knew they needed 2 other women, but it's not every day that you find someone interested in spending over a month in the middle of the ocean with you.
It's a really weird thing to pitch. Do you want to row on a small boat with people that you've never met before to date for upwards of a month, sleeping in piecewise shifts ranging from 10 minutes to 90 minutes, eating bags of, hot mush and like rowing for at least 12 hours a day in ever-changing conditions.
A lot of people want to have rowed in ocean, but once you get clear on like, okay, these are the expectations and this is like what it actually takes and this is the workload, it becomes like, whoa, like I can't commit to that.
That spring, while the planning was just getting started, Libby found herself back in her hometown catching up with Brooke Downs, a friend she had rowed with in high school who had gone on to race for the University of Southern California.
And I had mentioned that I was looking for some music because I was going to start erging again, and I was going to be erging for a really long time. And she has an expansive playlist reputation. So I was like, well, if you have any training playlists, then I'll be looking for them soon. And I had mentioned the idea of the ocean row, and the way that she puts it is she could either watch her friend land in Hawaii in about a year, or she could be on the boat with her. And, luckily for us, she chose the latter, and we got a great teammate out of it.
They had their 3rd teammate, but finding the 4th was a bit more difficult.
We had hired our physical trainer, who's based out of Santa Barbara, and one day he went home to his wife, who was previously a professional triathlete, and he was like, I'm training this team of 3 women and they're looking for a 4th, and I think you'd be a great fit.
Enter Adrienne Smith.
Adrienne is a strategizer. She's a businesswoman. She's a mother to a young daughter. And she likes to take in a bunch of information and be very decisive. And she was our last piece of the puzzle that we needed for our team. And though she didn't have any rowing experience, she brought so much like life experience with her. And she talked with the team a couple times and then she said yes, and we had a full roster.
Libby, Sophia, and Brooke had flatwater rowing experience, of course, but they had never been in the open ocean. Neither had Adrian.
There are so many skills that we needed to learn for the ocean row, and the rowing stroke was one of like 100 skills, and the stroke itself is not supremely complicated. One thing that I would say was helpful from an experience perspective is one of rowing's most notorious reputations is that of a team sport. And when you have experience on a team sport, I think you really know how to show up for other people and to like push yourself and figure out how to push them while also like building a stage for other people to shine.
Over the next few months, in addition to logging over 100 hours in open water, the team took a number of classes to help prepare them, using the requirements of the Great Pacific Race as their guide.
There's navigation, there's personal survival at sea, which is all about like the emergency scenarios of like if you're in a life raft and how do you make water and like things like that. There is marine radios. You have to have a permit to use a marine radio. So you have to pass an exam to get a marine radio operator's permit.
Libby, Sophia, and their teammates were essentially planning an expedition, a month-long trip into the wilderness with little opportunity for rescue at the mercy of the elements. It's kind of like a mix between ultra running and thru hiking, plus all the added complications of the open ocean.
If you had an emergency at sea, it might be 3 to 5 days until someone can get to you. So in our first aid class, for example, one of the questions was, should we bring an AED? Like if someone has a heart attack or something like that. And the response from the person in the training was like, look, realistically, if someone needs an AED, they need to be hospitalized quickly. If you're within a couple 100 miles of a coastline where someone can get a chopper to you, that's not going to happen. And so at a certain point, AED is more weight on your boat, and it might save them for a sec, but it's not going to save their life long term. And you're like, whoa, that's really serious.
As their launch date neared, the women gathered in San Francisco and spent their final days on land packing, going over the required gear, and bracing themselves for what lay ahead.
And then I think it was maybe 2 days before we were supposed to launch. We have some of our families are in town, and one of our teammates' parents tests positive for COVID. And he had spent the whole day with us, like in the house the day before, as we're packing our stuff and like getting our food all prepped. And we were like, well, what are we supposed to, like, is this going to be the thing? So we had to come up with this contingency plan. Like the question was like, will we leave? And if we leave and somebody gets sick in the first couple days, like, what are we going to do? And it was like, you're just like holding your breath until something either goes wrong or doesn't go wrong, because you're like, we have faced so many hurdles in the lead up, like recently and over just like the span of the project itself that we've been able to overcome. But is that going to be the thing that like stops us from doing this row that we've been preparing for?
With just a few days left to go before their launch, the team decides to just go for it. They pack a couple of COVID tests with them and hope for the best.
We woke up and it was just like this knowing was in the air. Like we had our kind of last breakfast. We like had gotten all our bags in the car and we just walked down the dock the same way we had, been walking down in our practice rows. And it was so exciting to like shove off the dock and be like, we're about to do the thing that we've been thinking about for over a year, that we've been preparing for. And also nobody can tell us how to do it now. I think there was this like feeling of freedom and it felt like we were ready to go.
After the break, the row begins.
As the days get longer, it makes it easier for me to get out on the trails, which I love. I can go early with the birds when they wake up, or I can stay out late and catch the sunset with friends. Whether you're scrambling up a rocky ridge or trekking through mossy, sun-dappled forests, or maybe you've got your sights set on something bigger like the AT, PCT, or CDT, Oboz has something for you. They craft purpose-built footwear with an unrivaled feel and rugged durability. They are committed to making better footwear and protecting our planet. From using recycled materials to powering their headquarters with clean energy, every step they take is intentional. And because they plant trees for every pair sold, Oboz is helping to rebuild the places we love. Thanks to Oboz for supporting the show, but more importantly, thanks for leading in a global movement to do business differently. To find your next pair of footwear, check out obozfootwear.com/lovehiking. Oboz Footwear. Love hiking. Snacks. I'm here for them because snacks are a key part of any good adventure. Though it would be hard to count how many sweet little treats we've doled out over the years, we always make sure to pack snacks that will actually keep our boys fueled for the day because they're little monsters. I swear to God, they eat so much. It's why I appreciate Kodiak Chewy Bars. They're protein-packed with whole grains and real ingredients that help keep all of us satisfied and ready for whatever the day brings. Kodiak bars have 7 grams of protein and taste great. They come in what I consider the classic bar flavors, chocolate chip and s'mores. That's right, classic. Plus, they're easy to slip into just about any sized pocket. From power cake mix to chewy bars to oatmeal and granola, you can find Kodiak products at kodiakcakes.com or your local grocery store. They're the ones with the bear on the box. Support for the Diaries comes from our good friends at Kuat Racks. Are you looking to level up your truck bed setup for the summer season? The Ibex from Kuat Racks is the perfect companion. This fully modular, all-metal bed rack system is built to handle every season and sport. So whether you're hauling bikes, kayaks, rooftop tents, or just gearing up for the summer road trip, the Ibex adapts with adjustable height options and a growing lineup of accessories. And now, new for 2025, the Ibex Panel Kit. It's designed to partially or fully enclose the Ibex. The panel kit keeps your gear secure and dry from the elements, and the lockable gull-wing doors offer a quick, easy access to the truck bed when you need it. Currently available for 2016 to 2025 Toyota Tacoma short beds with more fitments on the way. Find out more at kuat.com. Summer's here, which is awesome. Early mornings, late nights, raging all the time, which also means I'm hungry all the time. No matter where I'm headed, I can easily take Kachava's whole body meal shake with me. Their new travel packs ensure I get the nutrition I need with none of the guesswork or mess of packing it myself, because I definitely would make a mess. With 2 scoops of Kachava, you get 85 plus superfoods, nutrients, and plant-based ingredients. So not only am I getting 25 grams of plant-based protein, I'm also getting adaptogens and super greens at the same time. For me, there's the added bonus that there's no artificial flavors, colors, or sweeteners. That matters to me. Kachava has 8 flavors to choose from, including chocolate mint. I definitely use it after a long run, hard workout, long bike ride, climbing, all of the above. I find it helps to stave off the afternoon hunger pains, which are legit. Take your daily ritual with you. Go to Kachava.com and use the code DIARIES for 15% off your first order. That's Kachava, Kachava.com, code DIARIES.
On June 21st, 2022, the women got into their boat, waved goodbye to their friends and family, and took the first of nearly 1 million strokes.
We shove off and it's like awkwardly quiet.
Sophia, Libby, Adrienne, and Brooke were all alone. No crew, no chase boat, just the 4 of them in a tiny little rowboat.
It doesn't really look like a boat. It looks almost more like a capsule that like would be shoved out of a spaceship. The whole boat is about 28 feet long. I think it's 6 feet wide in the middle. And it's really designed to take a beating and have the people inside of it survive than it is to like be ultra lightweight and go really fast.
The boat,
Called the American Spirit.
it kind of looks like a pill with half of the middle cut out.
You're either inside the cabin or you're out on the deck rowing. There's no shade structures.
Which means if it's sunny, they're in the sun, and if it's raining,
You get wet. If there's waves, they splash on you.
the women spend the majority of the time in 3 seats, out in the open. But when it's time to catch a little shut-eye, they can go into one of the cabins on either end.
The roof of the cabin is maybe 6 inches above your head. And then it's too narrow to stretch out your arms to either side. So like you could maybe get your elbows up on either side. And then if you're sitting up with your legs straight out, the door comes about to the top of your knees. And then your legs are under the deck beyond your knees. So it's basically enough room to sit up from your thighs to your head. And that's like all of the area that you have. And everything else is covered in nets or like your bags. And then right behind my head is where our auto helm lives. So there's this constant kind of whirring of like, like that sound of the auto helm trying to hold our course.
For the first few days, the women were in kind of a daze, their bodies adjusting to the constant motion and the wild new schedule. As they left California, it was cold, and rowing through the night was eerie.
And then like day 4, we like came to like out of this fog of the body adjusting. And we were like, is this easy? Like, are we good at this? No, it's not easy. But, you know, the realization like, wow, our pace was like impressive. Like, not only are we alive and not calling the Coast Guard right now, we're kind of crushing it.
They needed to row more than 2,400 miles, which meant an average pace of almost 70 miles per day.
There's different types of shift patterns and different orientations, but the one that we found worked best for us was the 2 hours on the oars and 2 hours off the oars. So your main responsibility when you're on the oars is just rowing. And when you're off the oars, it's kind of everything else.
When I first heard about this, I could not wrap my head around it. I wasn't sure what sounded worse, rowing for 12 hours a day or staring at nothing the whole time.
In ocean rowing, people will ask like, is it more physical or is it more mental? And the response is it's 100% physical and 100% mental.
Unlike an activity like trail running or bike touring where the terrain is constantly changing, I figured that rowing 2 hours on, 2 hours off for over a month would drive me insane. But Libby and Sophia tell me that it wasn't as monotonous as I had imagined.
I'd say the terrain changes just as much as if you're trail running. Let's say like you have your 2 hour shift and you go in your cabin. When you come out again 2 hours later, it feels different. Like you can tell that you're not in the same place that you were before. And the state of the water changes constantly. And so every time you get on the oars, you kind of a puzzle to figure out like cadence and what type of intensity and like how to match the conditions and convince the boat to move faster with your limited amount of energy reserves. You just become very observant, and whether it's the birds or the flying fish or the clouds, like there's always something to consider. Yeah, there's always tinkering, and you know, if the conditions change like 2%, like a thing that we would say a lot is like you go 0.1 nautical miles faster every hour, that's a full day faster to Hawaii. And so it doesn't feel that monotonous. I thought it was going to be a lot more boring too.
The team had a few rules to help break up the grind of their rowing shifts.
So you would get on deck for your own shift. You'd row 1 hour with somebody from the other cabin. They would switch. And then you get your second hour with somebody else. So as interesting and sort of ever evolving as the weather and the water and the things that you could do on deck were, it was like punctuated by these timestamps of someone else's shift change, your own shift change, or like your own responsibilities that you had depending on what time of day it was. So I think that was sort of helpful in having a structure to it. And we would just do that like around the clock.
When they weren't on the oars, it wasn't like they could just sleep for a full 2 hours. There was a lot to do.
That is personal hygiene. That's like boat hygiene, cleaning the deck, or doing any type of sorting that needs to happen. If you want to do laundry, you do laundry. If it's your shift to make a meal, you make a meal. If you need to talk to the land team or use any of the communications equipment, like you do that in your off shift. And you go to the bathroom, and part of the personal hygiene is like you wipe yourself down, you change clothes, and needing to just handle any type of repairs that had come about either while you were on your rowing shift or that just happened as you got off. And so once all the other stuff is handled, whatever time left is remaining in your 2 hours off the oars is what you can use to sleep. There were certain shifts where you know that you're not going to get more than half an hour of sleep, and then there are other shifts where you're like, I'll reliably, you could reliably get like up to 90 minutes if you kind of did your transitions quickly. But in your off shift is also when you would eat the bulk of your food, and so you just, even if you were tired and you really wanted to sleep, you always needed to be like taking a couple bites of something before you fell asleep so that you could be refueled for your next rowing shift.
The goal was to get about 5,000 calories a day, which is pretty hard to get to, especially if your like stomach is not really settled.
The bulk of their calories were coming from freeze-dried meals. Part of the packing requirement was 55 days worth of food, which meant they packed about 700 freeze-dried meals,
which I called like hot mush. In addition to the bags, we had snack packs, which are like gallon Ziploc bags that are full of stuff. And the way that it was described to us was the freeze-dried food gets you all the sort of calories and energy that you need, and the snack packs remind you that you like to eat. These like whole grain crisp bread crackers, those were really good. We had a lot of like dried apricots, and there's also these Trader Joe's like little lemon thins, and those ended up being a bit of a saving grace, as well as peanut M&Ms. Always went down pretty easy. That was a fan favorite.
There was one thing that I would not share, and that was salami with a dried apricot and a seeded cracker. And it was like the perfect combination of like crunchy, salty, sweet with fiber that felt really good. And it was like too luxurious to give away.
Another key element was water. A gallon of water weighs 8 pounds, so they couldn't bring enough fresh water for their whole trip. So, like sterilizing water in the backcountry, the team needed to make, or more specifically desalinate, their water every day.
We would run the water maker for the same hour every day in the middle of the day from like 12 to 1 so that we could refill all of our water, and that would be our water for the next 24 hours.
And remember, what goes in must eventually come out.
You know, your body's elimination system doesn't care about waves. When you gotta go, you gotta go. And like, you can't wait 3 days to pee if that's how long it's going to take for the waves to calm down. Just out here, like white knuckling the grab lines, like on this bucket that's like sliding back and forth, just like locking eyes with my teammate who's watching me. That was like every 4 hours. Like, that's not like this one time when I used the bathroom. Like, no, that was every time we needed to use the bathroom for over a month was that situation. Of like getting rained on. Like, we didn't have a way to go to the bathroom inside the cabins. And so if you were on your off shift and you needed to go, like, and for me, it would be sudden. I'd be like, I got to go right now. And I just burst out, no clothes on. And then you're just sitting there, like, getting sloshed around, like locking eyes with your teammates. And you're just like, this is our reality. Like, this is who we are.
Besides covering their basic needs, the chores, like the rowing, never ended. They'd wash laundry with seawater and then rinse it with fresh water to conserve as much drinking water as they could. There were always things to fix, though luckily they had no serious repairs to navigate.
You have to clean barnacles off the bottom of the boat, especially as it gets warmer, they grow faster. And then, like, if something were to break, like your dagger board or your rudder, or if there was a hole in the boat, you would have to get into the water to fix it.
The women were largely self-sufficient, but they did have a satellite device they could use to contact the outside world. Every morning, they'd get an update from their professional weather router, Dawn.
So basically what she did was she has her own kind of like forecasting models, and every day we would get a message from her saying what she expected the weather to look like for that day and the next couple days, and then some guidance on what our heading should be. And her guidance was like, I think we were not fully prepared for like how vague it was going to be.
They had a few other people back on land that they could contact with questions. Chris and Tom were there for boat-related questions.
That was good because Chris lived in the UK and Tom lived in the US. So time zone-wise, like at any time of night or day, we could call someone.
And there was Dave, the electrician.
Anything that was like water maker or solar panel or battery related, we would have called him.
Plus, they had a team doctor.
If someone had like an infected blister or something, we would send a photo to her and she would tell us what she thought we should do.
But largely, Libby and Sophia were enjoying the opportunity to bask in the remoteness of their position, and feeling disconnected from the world outside their little boat was an important part of their experience.
At least for me, like the opportunities that you have to be disconnected and not be actively messaging one or multiple people like throughout the day, every day, it feels pretty rare. And at some point, maybe in like the first week, I realized that I wanted to try to not connect to the satellite every day. It was like a really rare opportunity to just be so present. And one of the really wonderful things about being out on the ocean is like we didn't have access to internet. So we got to wonder about so many things, and we would ask each other questions about our own experiences like in life and stories, and we would, you know, learn a lot about each other, but we also would ask questions that like we didn't know the answer to. And because we couldn't look it up, we would just build our cases for it over like 24 hours until we could message our land team on one of the satellite devices and be like, can you answer this question for us? And they're like, that's not a pressing question. We're like, it's pressing.
Is there an example?
Oh yeah. Like so my favorite one that we really asked each other was, do you think penguins have knees? And our boat was pretty split. And I asked this question in presentations too, and it's always split. And I won't give the answer on this podcast because you should come to a presentation or look it up. But like, think about, do they have knees? And you know, we asked like, how many nipples do we think whales have?
Though they tried to limit their communication with friends and family back home, as they reached the halfway point, a flood of encouraging messages came through, bolstering their spirits for the second half.
We get halfway and we have all these videos from our family members and stuff that people have prepared for us. That's like, you're halfway, like you're doing so good, like almost there. And then Jason's video comes up.
Jason, the guy who had helped them put this team together.
And he's like, I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And we're like, all right, drill sergeant. And he was like, it's going to be really tempting to start thinking about this being over, starting now, because you've reached a halfway point. And you need to know it is not over. Like, now is when you have to recommit to this being hard and this being something that you're going to work hard for every shift, because the more you start to daydream about it being over and being home or seeing your family or getting to land, like the worse your experience in this moment will be, and the worse your performance in this moment will be. So if you do want to get there fast, you need to like push those dreamy thoughts out of your mind and like get back to reality. And I remember being like, wow, what a buzzkill. But also exactly what we needed to hear, because we had been just hoping for ease. And I think the sooner we let that go, the sooner we were able to get back to just being like, okay, we're just going to keep rolling, keep doing our thing. We know how to do this.
For the first 2 weeks, the women were really looking forward to the halfway point. They had heard stories of previous Pacific Ocean rowers who hit amazing weather halfway and basically surfed right to Hawaii.
We've never had those conditions. So we just had waves hitting us and we were going west. So we're just being hit from side to side. And like in the night, like you can't see where they're coming from. Just the entire time, almost the entire time was just rocking. Punctuated by whenever it was calm, with the exception of maybe 2 days, we would have a headwind. So it'd be like, okay, well, we're not getting knocked off our seat, but also it sucks and it's really heavy and concrete rowing. Like we're rowing through concrete right now. And I think that the lows were really like kind of like realize, like giving up hope on this imaginary scenario that we really thought was going to be our reality.
For the first half of their row, the nights were cold, uncomfortable, and kind of creepy. But as they settled into life on the open ocean, the remoteness of their location soon started to feel like a gift.
I think when the idea of like being in a remote place comes about, a pretty common answer is to think of the most remote land mass that is like surrounded by ocean, for example. And you're like, well, we're just like a version of that on a boat. Like we're just moving through it. I think sometime in the middle, like when we were more than 1,000 miles from like either coast was really when it hit me. I remember I had this thought and I was like, if there was any time that I would like want to run or get claustrophobic or feel just, I don't know, have any type of like breakdown about how far I was from anything, it would probably be right here because there's literally nowhere I could go. But there's also nowhere I would rather want to be than on this boat doing this thing with these people. And I think that one of the most wild parts about it was just how transcendent the experience can be. It's sort of like the ultimate flow state. And if you're really willing to just be open to every feeling that will kind of pass through while you're out there and embrace like all the waves and the flying fish and every storm and every sunrise and sunset it's just magical, really. And I, for example, on our night shifts, because we had usually 2 full 2-hour shifts rowing in the dark and then like half of a shift before the sun would either go down or come up. So you had at least 5 hours every night of looking at the moon. And like that's just the brightest thing around. So you're obviously going to look at it and you're just in awe of it the whole time. And magic is really the word that just comes to mind when you're out there for so long and surrounded by so much beauty.
The days ticked by. On day 34, they finally saw Hawaii, but they weren't done rowing yet. They had to make it to the Waikiki Yacht Club on the south side of Oahu.
See land, but it wasn't the island we were going to. So we like rode past the big island in Molokai. It was really funny. Our social media manager was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for you guys to go past the cliffs of Molokai. The cliffs of Molokai is like one of the most amazing views you'll ever see. It was like 1 a.m. when we passed the cliffs of Molokai. And it was just like a giant shadow where like it just kept looking like a wave that was coming from that direction. And it was weird because the waves were coming from the other direction. But we were just like, oh my gosh, like are we about to be enveloped by this wave? And we're like, oh, that's the cliffs that we're supposed to be able to see.
With the end in sight, they each spent time thinking about what it would be like to be back home on the other side of this huge adventure.
That for a lot of people in ocean row or any expedition, like the time away really makes you think about like what you're going back to and like what you're excited about or what needs to change. How you feel about going back to your life is like a pretty big, is maybe like the whole point of getting away, because that like gives you the clue of like how do you want to exist once you're home. And I think that for me, approaching Hawaii was really being like, yeah, like I've done a good job building a life that I'm excited to go back to. And I'm ready to like, I'm really excited that I'm doing this. And I'm also like ready for the next thing. I feel like it's like giving me the tools that I needed to do the next thing.
We came in at like the golden hour as well. So it was like, there was a lot of people that were there kind of on the shores and that were like paddling out to greet us. And there was like a rainbow that was in the background, sort of landing right over the yacht club.
There were like hundreds of people on the shore, like holding signs, like people that we did not know. Like we have not seen anyone but each other for 34 days. And now there's like strangers who know our names, who know what we're doing, who are like looking at us. So that was crazy. We put on Girls Just Want to Have Fun really loud. Yeah, we like really leaned into like our girly pop vibes rowing in.
And so it was this really like cinematic moment almost, because also you need to navigate past a couple of different docks before you got into like where we were pulling into. So it felt like we could see people, but it was almost like this fish tank moment where like they couldn't touch us yet.
After 34 days, 14 hours, and 11 minutes, the women took their final strokes. They had shaved more than 24 hours off the world record. They were elated, stunned, and pretty out of it.
So we're just like blasting our music. We're coming in. They're looking at us. We're just like trying to get into the right spot. There's really particular rules around like the Guinness Book of World Records. So we sort of waited for a moment. Like people were quiet, and it was kind of surreal. And I think Adrienne said like hello, and that like broke it. And like she had the young daughter at the time. She was maybe like 5 or 6, and she came like running down. And then we all stepped off, and we got to give like huge hugs to the people who had come to see us.
Immediately stepping off the boat, we were handed Mai Tais. And we were like, no, cannot do this.
Within 20 minutes of stepping on land for the first time in over a month, the women were on Good Morning America.
This morning, 4 women rowing their boat into the record books.
Everybody stay strong, beautiful, kind, brave.
Rowers Libby Costello, Sophia Dennison-Johnston, Brooke Downs, and Adrienne Smith make up the Lat 3-5 women's team. Stroke by grueling stroke, they rowed more than 2,400 nautical miles from San Francisco to Hawaii.
So they bring us like water and some food, and then we're like whisked into this room in the yacht club that is so hot, like so warm. There's only like 2 seats. Like we have to like 2 of us have to sit and 2 of us have to stand to be in the frame of the camera, and we're just like swaying. Like we're delirious. We've just landed, and standing is really hard. Like we're physically exhausted, but also like experiencing gravity in a way we haven't in a month. And so we look at this interview and we just look dazed and confused because that's how we feel.
The other funny thing about ocean rowing is that you're not really weight bearing at all. You're standing, like you may be walking 2 steps from your cabin door to your seat. So my legs were like, they were done. I was stumbling up the stairs. I like needed a hand to stay balanced just to get places. And then I remember the most extreme part is like in the shower where there's water, you close your eyes and like the whole world just turns upside down. And I just remember being like, I think I need to sit down like on the floor of this shower in order to not like have a help, I've fallen, I can't get up moment at the ripe age of like 25.
Over the next few days, the women went their separate ways. Libby and Sophia each went through a drop in energy and stoke, something I think a lot of people feel after achieving such a big goal.
The transition home is definitely, it can be really jarring. There's an adjustment period that I knew that it was coming, but I didn't know exactly how to prepare for it. When I got home, I was doing regular things that, a 25-year-old was doing. I was looking for a new apartment. I decided that I didn't want to stay at my job and needed to look for a new one. I wanted to explore the area that I lived in because I had moved there kind of midway through training. But because I was training and working so much, I didn't really go any new places and I hadn't met anybody new. But I definitely came off the row with sort of this renewed sense of giving stuff a try. And I think that one thing that Sophie did really well that I'm also incorporating into, the preparation for this Atlantic row is kind of building the nest that you're going to come back to when you do return. And so I'm, at this point, we've had the transition out of college athletics. She's had the transition out of elite level rowing. We've both had the transition out of, our first ocean row. And I know in my mind that there's going to be a big transition period for me, just kind of the come down of it all next winter, and just trying to really set myself up to be received by, whatever life that I've built at that point.
Did you catch that? Well, for many, rowing across an ocean would feel like a once-in-a-lifetime experience. For Libby and Sophia, it's kind of becoming a habit. This December, they'll be embarking across the Atlantic. And while they're excited to see how they can improve on their rowing and logistics, it's the feeling of camaraderie that's got them coming back for more.
Especially for the people on the team who haven't done an ocean row before. I love working with them. I think their energy gives a lot to my life. And also I love that I get to be a facilitator for them to have a transformative experience. And I think that, I'm stoked on that.
They'll be joined by 2 new teammates this year. But for Libby and Sophia, doing this together was non-negotiable.
Going way back to 2021, to be asked to do this thing with her was like an absolute honor, because I was like, you have the coolest people in the world, like on your list of contacts, and you could ask anyone to do this thing that seems so cool and out there with you. And it was just immediately like a yes for me for many reasons. And one of them was just the honor of being asked at all. One of the things about it is it's like these adventures are one of the aspects of our friendship, but it's not like we need them to continue to be friends. And I feel so lucky to have a friendship and a deep relationship with someone like Sophie, who I just admire and respect and has seen me through so much and kind of at all different sides. And also, I feel like these kinds of experiences are just things that we both gravitate towards that help sort of bring out like the people that we want to be, and to be able to get to do that alongside each other is such a fun privilege.
Libby is such a special person, and I think it's like obvious. Anyone who meets Libby is going to be like, there's no one in the world like this person. But it's so cool to see like how far we've both come, and to be like, look, remember when you thought that like you couldn't pass this exam? Now you've rowed across an ocean. Like, who is she? You know? and both of us. And I think like maybe it felt like it kind of started as more of like a mentorship role, but it very quickly evolved into a friendship that I knew I could rely on. And, you know, we've both been through so many changes, and we've both grown so much. And I know that Libby is someone that like I can bring my mess to.
I feel just like immeasurably grateful and excited for whatever part we play and continue to play in each other's lives. But it's in no way I could have predicted this from when we first met, or even when we stopped being on the same college rowing team.
Thank you, Libby and Sophia, for sharing your story. If you want to follow along as they prepare for their next adventure across the Atlantic, you can follow them on Instagram at _Seabirds_row. Our stories come from friends of friends, and from you, our community. If you have a compelling idea for a guest or a story lead, please give us a shout. You can email us at editor@ducktapethembeer. Even if you just want to drop us a nice note. No mean ones, though. Thanks to the folks who have recently become Diaries Plus members, and to those of you that continue to support. It allows us to do so much. It allows us to be independent. It allows us to continue to do the things that we feel like matter, that matter to you, and we're deeply grateful. Please consider joining. Want another way to help? Write us a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps others find the show. Music today from Brittany Pavia, Analog Colors, The Pushers, Cowboy Country, and Brennan O'Connell. The tracks are courtesy of the Artists or Track Club. Jacob Bain and Nice Cotto composed our theme song. You can find the artists at our website, dirtbagdiaries.com. This episode was produced by Lauren Delaney Miller with additional production help from Becca Cahal. Illustration by Walker Cahal. Becca Cahal is our executive producer. I'm Fitz Cahal, and you've been listening to the Dirtbag Diaries. Thanks for tuning in.